I stared out of the floor-to-ceiling window of my downtown apartment, the city lights flickering like tiny constellations below. My silk blouse brushed against my wrists as I poured another cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the sleek, quiet space. Everything about this life screamed stability, success, independence, but nobody would guess the truth behind the polished surfaces. Not even my colleagues, not even my friends. Then my phone buzzed, shattering the calm. I glanced at the screen. Uncle James. My heart tightened, and a faint tremor ran through my fingers. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since the day he'd promised he'd check on me after everything with my stepfamily. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, hiding the flood of memories beneath a practiced smile. "Emily, I heard about everything," he said, and I froze. My coffee sloshed slightly, the mug warm against my palm. The words hit harder than I expected. The truth I'd tucked away, the nights in my car, juggling 2 jobs, scraping together rent, was no longer mine to hide. I swallowed, feeling a mixture of embarrassment, pride, and disbelief. After everything I'd endured, I'd built the life they couldn't have imagined. And now Uncle James, who had always been my quiet lifeline, had found me. The thought of facing him again, letting him see the woman I'd become, made my pulse quicken. I adjusted my blazer, exhaled slowly, and braced myself. It was time to let the past and present collide. I remember the first night I realized I couldn't stay home anymore. I was 16, sprawled across the worn carpet of my small bedroom, listening to the muffled laughter of my stepfamily celebrating some meaningless victory in the other room. The tension had been building for months, snide remarks, cold shoulders, whispered threats, and that night, something inside me finally snapped. "Why can't you be normal?" my stepmother sneered, her words slicing through me like ice. My father had said nothing, as usual, and I felt the familiar hollow ache in my chest, the feeling that I didn't belong anywhere. My hands shook as I picked up the only thing I owned that carried warmth, a small silver locket from my grandmother. She had pressed it into my hand a week earlier, telling me, "No matter where life takes you, Emily, you carry your own light." That locket became my talisman, my promise to myself that I wouldn't crumble under their cruelty. I packed a small bag in silence, careful not to wake anyone. The house felt suffocating, each hallway a reminder that I wasn't welcome. As I stepped outside into the chilly night, the wind bit at my cheeks, and I hugged my bag close. I found my temporary refuge in the back seat of my beat-up Honda, parked under the dim glow of a street lamp. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My world had shrunk to the cramped car, my school, and 2 part-time jobs, each day a test of endurance, each night a lesson in resilience. I cried quietly, afraid that if anyone saw me, I'd be judged or pitied. And yet, despite the exhaustion and the fear, there was a strange clarity in that solitude. I realized that my worth wasn't determined by their scorn. The locket felt heavy against my chest, a constant reminder of my grandmother's words. "Carry your light. Shine anyway." By the time the sun peeked over the horizon, I had made a decision that would define me. I wasn't just escaping abuse. I was reclaiming my life. One day, I would prove, not to them, but to myself, that I was unstoppable. Living in that car was both terrifying and liberating. I learned to navigate every inch of my world with precision. The cramped back seat became my bedroom, my office, and sometimes my sanctuary. The first winter was the hardest. Frost clung to the windows, and the hum of the heater was a meager comfort. I wore layers, hiding the bruises life had left on me, and worked 2 jobs, one in a bustling diner, the other delivering packages, counting every penny, dreaming of more. I kept a journal in the glove compartment, scribbling down ideas, business plans, and aspirations that seemed impossible. That locket, warm against my skin, reminded me daily, I wasn't just surviving, I was building a life worth living. Then came Miss Harper, my first real mentor. She ran a small graphic design firm and noticed me staying late at the library, sketching and learning from outdated tutorials. One afternoon, she approached me. "You've got talent," she said, scanning a rough portfolio I had hesitantly shown her. "Don't let anything or anyone hold you back." Her words felt like a lifeline tossed across a stormy sea. She took me under her wing, teaching me the industry's intricacies, giving me unpaid freelance work at first, and then slowly, paid opportunities. The days blurred into nights of relentless effort. I coded, designed, and pitched ideas while juggling my diner shifts and package deliveries. I learned how to negotiate, how to pitch to skeptical clients, how to command respect in rooms dominated by people who doubted me simply because of my age and appearance. Exhaustion became a companion, self-doubt a whisper I refused to listen to. And yet, little victories piled up. My first freelance client paid me for a full project, then another, and then a small local business contracted me for an ongoing project. Each paycheck was a triumph, a building block toward independence. I saved diligently, rented a tiny apartment eventually, and upgraded my car to something a little less claustrophobic. My success remained invisible to my stepfamily. I posted modest social media updates, careful not to reveal the full scale of my achievements, and avoided calling attention to myself. Through it all, the locket rested against my heart, a constant reminder that I had carried my own light through the darkest nights. I had turned desperation into determination, isolation into skill, and fear into the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knew what she was capable of. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a future where I controlled every outcome. By the time I landed my first major client for a six-figure project, I realized the life I had once only imagined in the cramped back seat of my car had arrived. I was successful, independent, and most importantly, I was unstoppable. Yet, despite everything I'd achieved, a part of me still clutched that locket, knowing the past was never far behind, waiting for the right moment to knock on my door. The knock at the door was deliberate, echoing in the hallway of my sleek apartment. My heart gave a faint flutter, not from fear, not anymore, but from anticipation. I knew exactly who it was before I even opened the door. Uncle James. And behind him, reluctantly, a few members of my stepfamily. I took a slow, deliberate breath, adjusting the silk blouse and blazer I had chosen for the day. My apartment was immaculate, but lived in, each corner telling a story. The abstract painting from a small gallery I had discovered while freelancing, the floor-to-ceiling bookshelf filled with reference manuals, novels, and journals full of ideas I had nurtured into success. The air smelled faintly of lavender and coffee, comforting yet sophisticated, just like me now. "Emily." Uncle James's voice carried both warmth and a twinge of guilt. He stepped forward cautiously, almost afraid to touch the polished surfaces, as if they might shatter under his weight. I smiled faintly, letting my calm mask the storm of emotions beneath. "Hello, Uncle James." I wasn't expecting company today. My tone was smooth, confident, controlled. They all stepped inside, taking in the space. My stepmother's eyes darted from the state-of-the-art coffee machine to the glass-walled office where I kept my work set up, clearly expecting clutter, chaos, or some sign of struggle. Instead, they found order, elegance, and subtle hints of wealth they hadn't anticipated. The city's skyline glittered behind me, a silent testament to the life I had quietly built. I gestured toward a chair. "Please sit. Let me show you something." I led them to the wall where framed letters from clients, certificates of achievement, and screenshots of major projects hung. Not ostentatious, but deliberate. "This," I said, pausing as their eyes scanned the collection, "is my work, my effort, my independence." Shock rippled across their faces. My stepmother's jaw tightened. My father looked guilty, unsure where to place his hands. Even Uncle James blinked rapidly, as if trying to process the transformation before him. "I know what you think of me," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I know you imagined I was still struggling, living in my car, scraping by. And yes, I did. I worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, and kept my dreams alive despite everything." I took a step back, letting the weight of the words sink in. But that life ended. I didn't just survive. I built this. I gestured to my office, my apartment, the skyline beyond. I own my company now. My clients trust me. I'm financially independent, more than I ever imagined I could be at 24. I'm not asking for your approval, nor your pity. I'm here to show you that the girl you underestimated is no longer hiding. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. Faces drained of color, disbelief and shame battling for dominance. Uncle James finally exhaled, his eyes glistening. Emily, I had no idea. You didn't ask, I said softly, a hint of irony in my tone. But now you see. The girl you all thought would break under your rules never did. And she never will. They stared, absorbing every detail, every nuance of the woman I had become. I had turned invisibility into power, neglect into drive, and pain into proof that resilience can shape destiny. For the first time in years, I had the upper hand. The room was quiet, tension thick, but the silence no longer intimidated me. It fueled me. I could see the fear, the disbelief, even the guilt written across their faces. I let it linger for a moment, letting them absorb the truth that I had carved my own path while they assumed I was lost. Before anyone says a word, I began, my voice calm but deliberate. Let's be clear. I built this life alone. Every late night, every sacrifice, every tear in the back of my car, every doubt I silenced, I earned it. I am not here to beg for forgiveness. I am here to offer a choice. You can step into a different chapter of your lives, or you can continue living in the shadows of your mistakes. My stepmother flinched, my father lowered his gaze, and Uncle James leaned forward, silently urging them to listen. I continued. I can help, I said. But there are conditions. Not for me. For you. For the people you could become if you are willing to let go of the past. I turned to my stepmother first. You must stop trying to control lives that aren't yours. Seek something meaningful for yourself, volunteer, pursue a skill, or even therapy. Learn to nurture rather than belittle. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand gently, signaling she would only hear once. To my father, acknowledge the failures, make amends where you can, and truly listen when people speak. Your silence costs me more than you realize. I glanced at Uncle James. You've always supported me quietly. Continue doing so, but never at the expense of my growth or independence. That's the boundary. Every word was measured, compassionate yet unyielding. I wasn't punishing them. I was setting rules for accountability. I wanted them to grow, to heal, to transform their own lives, just as I had transformed mine. And if you fail, my stepmother whispered, incredulous. Then I continue without you, I said simply. I've learned that survival is not enough. I deserve respect, honesty, and relationships built on trust, not fear. I won't compromise that again. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause, where the room seemed to hold its breath. And then, slowly, nods began to appear. Not immediate understanding, not complete acceptance, but the first flickers of acknowledgement. I looked at them, letting my gaze soften, letting the warmth of my words reach past the resentment and the shame. This isn't about revenge. It's about change. About becoming people capable of respect and love. The power shift was complete. I wasn't just the girl they thought they broke. I was the woman who had rewritten the rules. And for the first time, they understood that any connection with me now required effort, honesty, and growth. The locket at my throat warmed against my skin, a reminder that the girl who once lived in her car had become the woman who could choose the terms of every relationship in her life. They had entered my world expecting weakness, and left with the lesson that strength, resilience, and grace were not just words, but a reality they had never imagined. Weeks passed, and slowly, the people who had once cast shadows over my life began to change. My stepmother signed up for a community art class she'd always joked she didn't have time for. My father sought therapy, confronting his own mistakes and the silence that had hurt me so deeply. Even Uncle James became more involved in mentoring young family members, channeling his resources toward guidance rather than passive observation. I watched these changes with a quiet sense of satisfaction, but also with reflection. The girl who had lived in her car, hiding from a world that didn't understand her, had grown into a woman who could both give and receive without fear. Every late night, every ache of exhaustion, every moment I felt invisible, all of it had been worth it. That locket, once a small silver talisman in my palm, now rested against my heart daily, a reminder of my grandmother's wisdom. Carry your light. It had guided me through hardship, through isolation, through doubt. And now it had guided others, in its own subtle way, toward growth and redemption. I spent a quiet evening on the balcony of my apartment, the city skyline stretching endlessly before me. The breeze lifted my hair gently, and I inhaled deeply, savoring the calm. I thought about the journey, the nights of hunger, the fear, the relentless hustle, the small victories that stacked like building blocks. I thought about the woman I had become, strong, independent, compassionate, but never naive. And I realized, finally, that my worth had never depended on the approval of those who had doubted me. My life, my choices, my success, they were mine and mine alone. The past had shaped me, yes, but it did not define me. I smiled softly, the locket warm against my chest, and whispered aloud, more to myself than anyone else. I survived. I thrived. And I will never forget who I am, or where I came from. That was the truth I carried with me every day. I had endured abuse, poverty, and doubt, yet I emerged whole. I had turned my darkest nights into a foundation for brilliance. And now, looking out at the lights below, I knew I was unstoppable, not because of wealth, or recognition, or vindication, but because I had learned to honor myself, no matter what anyone else believed. The city sparkled around me, a reflection of the life I had fought to claim. And in that glow, I felt complete, powerful, and free, finally living the life I had always deserved.